The BCG India has come out with a report saying that it's the affluent of the system which will really drive high value consumption in the country in a major manner over the next 10 years. So we thought of taking a status check. How is the country doing as far as consumption is concerned, with an expert voice joining us on the show. He's Abhik Singhi, senior partner at BCG. In fact, he's the head of consumption related practice at BCG India for the Asia Pac division, and also travels and draws parallels to several other countries. Abhik, good evening. Thanks a lot for your time joining us on the show. Let's start by understanding what state of the economy we are in right now. We are here on ET Now, been taking status checks with host of people on the recovery in our economy. How are you seeing the recovery in the economy? Do you think consumption is back to pre-note ban era levels now?
That's a great question. I think the answer is somewhat de-averaged. I think it's a tale of two cities, two categories or two channels. One finds that in north and east, the recovery is still not completely back, while in south and west, it's actually back to normal. Again, if you look at FMCG and durables, the story is different. FMCG, I would say, has recovered to where it was in the pre-demonetization era, while in case of durables, I think we are still seeing it coming to almost that place, but not yet there. And the third is around the channels. The direct channel or the direct dealer or the distributor channel is back. The wholesale is still probably a month or so away.
Hi, Big. This is Nayantara from the New Delhi studio. Your study says that rising affluence would drive change in consumer behavior and spending pattern. That's a given. But are you seeing that shift as yet?
So I would say there are three big themes which are coming. I think the first is just looking at the size of demand. Today, India is the sixth largest consumption economy in the world. By 2025, we expect that India will move from number 6 to number 3, only behind the US and China. The second is, if you look at the size of the consumption economy today in India, it's about $1.5 trillion. That is going to become close to 2.5 times to $4 trillion in the time period till 2025. The third is looking at where is the source of growth coming from. It's going to come from increased influence, affluence. It is going to come from increased urbanization, and it is going to come from increased nuclearization or the rise of nuclear family.
Okay, so those are the trends that you are noticing. But what are the key categories that are likely to occupy the largest share of the pie? I'm of course talking about consumption here. So which are the sectors or what are the services that are attracting this kind of consumption?
Yeah. So it's actually a fairly secular growth across categories. But I think the first part of your question is a very important one, which is who is going to spend more? And by BCG definition, there are the elite and affluent households who have income more than 20 lakhs and 10 lakhs per annum respectively. In 2016, they accounted for about 6% of the population and consumed about 18% of the total consumption. By 2025, this is going to be close to 50 million households, and they will account for 40% or nearly $1.6 trillion of the total consumption. So that's going to be the single largest driver from a segment perspective. In terms of categories, while all categories are going to increase, the ones which are going to see a breakout growth are really the ones which are above the bare essentials, the discretionary categories across FMCG, across durables, and interestingly, even across services where education, healthcare, and other services are the ones which are going to see significant growth.
Interesting observations, Abhik. In this kind of a dynamic scenario which you are talking about, which exactly are the kind of companies and brands which will be able to keep up with these changes which you are alluding to, likely to shape up in the next couple of years?
So I think our report highlights three things very clearly as opportunities for companies. I think the first is the need to really de-average the opportunity. Let me give you an example. One would typically think that premium products should be sold only in the top tier markets. We've done analysis which indicates that of the top 50 micro markets, which is at the level of a ward, or let's say Bandra is the equivalent of a micro market. Of the top 50 micro markets in India, 22, 44% are actually not in the top tier cities. It's actually in the not in the Bombays and Delhis of the world, but the next tier of cities. If you look at the 5 out of the top 10 of these, they are not in the metros. So I think finding the opportunity in the right place is the first. The second opportunity for companies is to actually build brands which take pride in Indianness. Consumers are actually willing to spend and are actually telling us that they would spend more on Indian brands, other things being equal. So brands which actually have Indianness associated have greater likelihood of success. And the third piece, which is I think very important, is how to build trust. In today's time, consumers are actually losing trust over traditional means of building the brand. So how does one really build advocates or really die-hard loyalists is going to drive success for companies.
So what exactly so special about these non-metros, this emerging city trend which you are talking about? What kind of change in spending patterns are you observing in this category of cities which you are alluding to?
So we find that the biggest opportunities of growth are going to come from the middle. They're not going to come from the metros and tier 1 cities, nor are they going to come from rural. It's the tier 3, tier 4 cities which are going to grow at 15% compared to the rest of the market, which is going to grow at about 12%.
Okay, that's a really interesting observation over there, which are the cities that are going to outperform. What about brand penetration? That has emerged as a key driver of growth in today's day and age. Is that set to change? And how exactly, if you're actually seeing ad spends also come down?
Sure. So we find that the consumer in middle India, from a perspective of willingness to spend, is the same as tier 1 India. The places where they differ from the consumers in metros is, number one, they want something with local relevance and cultural sensitivity. Second is the value for money orientation is actually higher in these consumers compared to the tier 1 or metro consumers.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/etnow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at etnowlive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/etnow.